Hard enough just getting through it for me the first time.
Perfect.
I have.
Oh, I have it.
No, I'll get one. I'll keep
Oh.
notes until then. But I'm like, I'll
One of those
eventually need one because I didn't print it.
Well, I know.
Yes, I would love one. Yes.
Get you set up. Came racing in. Yes, they
Testing.
No, I feel like I'm kind of, and not only am I a step up, but I feel like I'm high up on this. Yeah, I don't know. That they're the efficient, well-functioning governing body that they are. I'm sure they'll be coming out. Yeah,
That's true.
guys ready? Okay. All good? Okay, great. I'll gavel in the special meeting of the Ways and Means Committee. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims,
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderwoman Harder. All members are present.
Great, thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Do we have any changes or amendments to be made? Okay, seeing none, that'll be approved by acclamation. Item 3 on the report is the report of the committee chair and alderman. It's not really a report, but just a reminder that as we move through the budget topics, our next, I believe our next special meeting is Wednesday, October 18th at 5:30. I have that in my calendar, so thank you all for the extra time you're putting in as we get through this marvelous book. That's all I have for my report. Alderwoman Tice?
No report.
Alderman Gould?
No report?
Alderwoman Harder?
No report.
All right, great. Item 4 on the agenda is the city administrator report. Do we have anything for that? Seeing none. Okay, moving right along at a pace I like. Item 5 is department report. 5A is the investment report. I think we've got Brad on.
I'm here.
Evening, Brad, if you would lead us off on that topic.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Thank you for having me. So you should have 2 documents, just like prior months. If you notice on the first one with a little spreadsheet up on the front, those are a number of accounts that we manage for you guys. Most are bond proceed related. I think there are 6 debt service reserve fund accounts that we currently manage for you guys. The 2 project fund, the 2018 and 19 project fund accounts, those funds have been spent. And at the very bottom is the custody fund. So a number of months ago, you all found $9.7 million that we were able to invest at the highest rates that we have seen since '07. And so the timing of that really couldn't have been much better. And so right now, with all of that money that has been invested to date, since each one started, we started investing, it has earned a total of about $2,564,415.
That's great.
If we go to the next page with the blue graphs, I kind of like to show you something kind of cool, or tell you something kind of cool each time. And so this is just a progression of each month since we started investing just the custody money, the excess general funds. And so you see back in January of 23, that's where it started, and it kind of moved all the way up. I'm sorry, this is all the money, but the majority of this now is the custodial funds. So you see on the far right, it's earned a total of $2,564,000. That is a total, an average of about $54,000 a month that these investments are earning the city. January through September of this year, it's about $489,000 as well. So interest rates are still really good. We have seen a bit of a faster rise of a little bit longer term investments. Short term and longer are rising. We've seen the longer term rising at a little bit faster rate. And it's almost to the point where interest rates are not the highest they've been since '07. I was just looking at this a couple hours ago. It's almost to where they're the highest they've been since 2001. So still pretty neat environment to be able to invest and continue doing that. So this is all doing well for you guys. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any, so just keep up the good work.
Oh, okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
we'll do. All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You as well. All right, moving along. 5B on the agenda is the financial statements. Who's got that?
On, wasn't it? Hi, good evening. I would like to add to the investment thing before I move on quickly. Now that the 22 audit is done, I am working with the department and with Gina to find out if you have any excess reserves in which we could continue to add to the custody fund. And hopefully by next month, we'll be prepared to make some type of presentation to Ways and Means about adding more money to the custody fund and to the investment ladder that currently exists. So that is swirling in the background and will come to Ways and Means in the near future.
Great.
The August financial statements are in here. August has been fully reconciled. I know that that was one of the issues with the auditor and has been with the auditors. They are being reconciled within 15 days of the month now. You have your expenditure variance and your revenue analysis and variance as well. Bola sort of indicated she would read these items to you. Last time I just asked if you had any questions. Not really quite sure if you went somewhere in the middle. What would you prefer?
How about an executive summary?
An executive summary. And I'm still fairly new, but things are trending well. There's nothing that really jumps out, and the things that have sort of jumped out, there are some miscellaneous contractual that are higher than expected, and I think that that is due to hiring me. So there are some things that you knew were coming and not coming. Overall revenue is trending well. The economic development revenue is increased and higher than I think people expected. Some of your revenue won't start coming in until October, November, December with the taxes and some of those other collections. Overall, I don't see anything that gives my office any major stress with revenues or expenditures at the moment. September will be slightly higher because you had 3 payrolls, but at the moment, I don't have any major concerns.
Great. Anyone have any questions on that? I'm not seeing any. Was that
That's
the
it.
start and end of that section?
That's where I'm at.
Great, good news. Makes my job easy. Item 6, we don't have any old business. And then moving on to item 7, new business. 7A is the financial year 2024 proposed budget presentations. And tonight we're taking up general, admin, fire, and police. I don't really have a preference in what order we go in, so not everyone jump at once.
So I'll take the lead. What I'll give is kind of a general overview of the whole budget as a whole, and I'll kind of lead into fire and police. Chief Speece did promise me of Coke if I let police go first. So, I mean, if we could help that along, that would help me. But I don't have any real, anyway. So I did put it up, and so this is kind of just a general overview of the whole budget. And to be honest, the budget story is very similar since it has been since 2018. And that's because in 2018, we passed the COPS to use our current revenue sources to pay off the first portion of Brentwood Bound. And because of that, our budget has been fairly lean over the last few years, and it continues to be so. Department heads have understood the directives from the board and what that meant to the debt service meant to the city, and have for the past few years continued to meet the challenge of making sure that we don't decrease any services, and we continue to perform highly and do all that with the additional COPS payment. So I think that's a credit to the department heads and everyone in the city right now. We give you my favorite document of the year, our 282-page budget book. I'm sure we've read it word for word. I'm sure you won't find any mistakes in it. I've already found multiple. But we'll get it all cleaned up for the board meeting, hopefully in December. And the biggest thing is that, as usual, we bring you a balanced budget. All the funds meet our fund balance policy, and that is the directive we give to you, we are given, and what we have to provide. We did see a 4% increase in sales tax, and that's really attributed to two things. It's the payment, the maturity of the TIFs of the Meridian and Hanley Station. So that's why you see sales tax increase more than a typical 1%, where we try to be conservative, but we see that and we think it's appropriate to budget for it. The budget does include two new positions, a code enforcement officer, and that's really moving that position from part-time to full-time. So it had been a part-time position. The department, the Planning and Development Department, I'm sure they'll talk about it at the next meeting, felt the need, the importance of making that full-time. We've heard from residents and from the board that that is important to make sure we stay on top of code enforcement. And so that is one of the recommendations we're making. The second, which I can talk more about later on, is the addition of a recreation specialist. That is due to a number of reasons. The biggest is that we continue to see a growth in general programming. Since 2018, we've seen a 1,000% increase in revenue. We continue to want to expand what we're doing. And what we say, and it gives my staff heartburn every time I say it, is we are working on how do we activate Brentwood Park. It's great that we have that park. It's beautiful, but we want people to come and we want to make it the regional destination it's going to be. And there, we have some tricks up our sleeves and things that we're going to be rolling out in the next year. But part of it is that our staff is at max capacity. So being able to bring in someone else that can continue to focus on room rentals, which I'll show you has also a 23% increase in revenue, as well as helping out with additional programming, specifically in the park, specifically for adults 21 to 46. That age group that we haven't really targeted, and really hopefully expanding senior programming as well. So that's kind of what we see there. We also include funding to start completing projects identifying the stormwater master plan. I know that's important to the city to start working on that. As you know, we're working on the designs for the first group, the first package, and that will be completed next year with OMCI money and some additional money from Fund 50. We also have funding to complete the Planning and Development Department's design guidelines that will be starting this year, but the bulk of it will be completed next year. So again, we have funding in there for that. And I know it's been kind of a discussion, so we do have funding for the city's half of McKnight Road in the budget as well. So kind of some high-level highlights before we move on. This just kind of gives you a broad overview of our budgets, each of our funds, and where they go from 23, 24, 25. What you want to see is in the second band of highlighted colors, you hopefully see an increase. You want to see that budget percent change increase. Now, if there's a reason it's decreased, we know those reasons. So in the capital improvement fund, the reason we see that 9% decrease is that the board decided last year to cash fund the sanitation truck this year. So that decreased our ending fund balance for this year. You'll see it continue to move up next year before in 25, where we're cash funding both the fire truck as well as the radios. So that's why you see that drop from 4.5 to 2.6. Economic Development Sales Tax Fund continues to be strong. Stormwater, the decrease there is because we continue to finish up Brentwood Bound. So we continue to, the capital expenditures related to Brentwood Bound is why you see that fund balance decrease. But the good news is we have Brentwood Bound ending at the end of 2024, and we see that $2.6 million fund balance, which is where we've been talking about for the last few years. We expected it to be, especially after the purchase of Mount Calvary and then using some additional funding on the Destination Playground. So we're in a good place when Brentwood Bound finishes. So that's good news there. Sewer Improvement Fund, the big reason for that is we decided to transfer the remaining balance of what was due back to the general fund. We figured we could do it this year. We've already done it. And so we can now say the Sewer Improvement Fund has repaid the loan from the general fund, and we're now just be dealing with the general fund moving forward. So while there are some negative decreases, they're all good news in my mind, and we're looking forward to continue to build those funds as we move forward. To mention, if you have any questions, just stop me at any time. Revenue sources, the big thing here is just, none of this is a surprise. It's very similar year after year, but 63% of our revenue comes from sales tax. Sales tax continues to be strong. We continue to see moderate improvement in some of the sales tax, which is great. We're also very cautious about what may happen if the grocery tax gets passed. So we're cognizant of that and understand what that will do to our budget if that happens.
Oh, yeah, I would consider this an open session.
please, any-
So please,
Well, you
as
had your
as
hand
you
up,
have
I just
questions,
spoke, so go ahead, Jeff.
How much of the sales tax do you think comes from grocery sales tax?
What did we say?
3.6 million. I think
3.6.
the estimates from, even from the consultants, is you're looking at about 3.6 million.
Okay. So roughly 17 million wouldn't be affected, but,
Yeah, and there is going to be a lag if that does get passed, so we probably wouldn't see it in a lag next year, and we'd really be looking at the effects of the 25 budget.
okay. Well, let's just hope it doesn't go through, so.
Yes.
Can I ask a question on the last slide about the Economic Development Sales Tax Fund?
Yes.
So the fund balance is going up a good amount. And then I know at some year, is it 2030 when the payments start getting bigger? And are we building the fund balance so that we can then pay the larger payments?
The, as far as the,
Alderwoman Tice, what page are you on?
Oh, I'm on page 20, but it's also in that graph in the orange.
also
So,
looking for one other page.
If you're following in the slideshow, it's the orange.
If you pull it up on board docs, it's page 3.
Oh, okay.
Page.
Okay.
Page 3.
Or I'm looking at
Or no, on your board docs.
Oh,
if
on
you're
board
looking
docs,
on 3 on your.
Oh, but-
paper page 20.
So if you look,
Yes.
In the
And
book,
so-
it's page 20.
and I'll actually have you go to a different page. If you go to page 27 of the budget book,
Okay.
sorry. This shows our debt service, and what you'll see from the economic development sales tax pays the 2019 COPS, and you'll see that's pretty steady until 2043, which is the last year, which has a larger payment. So the economic development sales tax does not increase as much. When you see the 2018 increase, so in 2029 to 2030, there's that $300,000. That is when the 2017, we expect the 2017 COPS to get paid off. So the capital improvement fund, if that's on page 26, you see that last payment being done in 2030. That's why you see the jump in 2031.
Great,
So
thank you.
we've been building that in revenue-wise. When we did the 2018 COPS, it was very systematic and reason of when increases were, and it was due to when other certificate participations were paid off.
Perfect, thank you. We talk about this all the time, and I'm glad.
Yeah,
to
no,
look,
it's-
I'm glad to see the chart, and I clearly didn't catch it when I read.
have to look at
I
it
may
too,
not have
so-
read it. I tried to read every word, but I must have missed this page because it's mainly. Anyway,
No,
Thank
no worries at all. So the expenditures is the next slide, and you kind of see two things. This one is our debt service and the transfer out, which is transfers from one fund to Fund 50 to pay the debt service. It is 25% of our budget. Overall budget, all funds. So it is a quarter of our budget is what we're losing each year to debt service. Personnel services is 45%, is the next, well, it's the largest. That will increase as capital decreases. As debt service decrease, you'll see personnel services get a larger piece of that pie, just because of where the expenditures are being paid from. Capital, we should see decrease next year, hopefully, because Brentwood Bound will be done. And so we'll see that last bit of payment out of Brentwood Bound, and we'll get to basically $3 or $4 million less in that capital expenditures. And so you'll see that percentage decrease as well. So that's just kind of a broad overview of the city's budget and where we pay money.
One more question back on if you go back to the main chart. And I think I might know this, but so in the sewer improvements fund, why is there such a significant jump? 268,700 on the line. Well, it's not numbered, but
Yeah, so the
expenditures of-
expenditures for this year, that is because we paid the transfer, the remaining bit of the transfer from back to the general fund.
okay,
So
okay. So that's why that
Yes.
number is so much higher.
it
there.
would have been
Okay.
around the because it was about $140,000 payment. So that is the.
Would have been closer to what was budgeted. so,
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I
Exactly.
thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
I knew that. Yep.
All right, so it's just, again, some highlights from the general fund. We do see a 3% increase in overall revenue from 2023 adopted budget. Some of the big things are the sales tax, municipal fire sales tax, and again, that's because of the 2 TIFs being paid off. The use tax, we do see 3% growth and feel that's appropriate, but we're starting to see it level out. And I think this will probably be the last year you see more than a 1% increase in use tax. It's getting to the point where, and it's a wonderful increase in our revenue, so we're happy. But I think we're starting to see the trends of what that will be from year after year. We did see an increase in occupational license due to just staff making sure to get those things in. And last is interest, and we've 831% increase, and I think we understand the reason why. We just talked to our good friend Brad, and we continue to see that. We budget conservatively on that interest year after year, but we reap the benefits of it when it comes in. So some expenditure highlights. The one thing is the movement. If you see some big big percentage decreases, increases. The big thing administration is that we moved the assistant finance director. It was being paid on miscellaneous contractual this year, and we moved it to the payroll account. So that's why you see the decrease in contractual and the increase in payroll. The transfer is used to help with the 2018 COPS payment, if you're wondering why we transfer money still. The fire department is, it's interesting when you see a 2% decrease over an entire department. And the big reason there is because last year we included the money for the mattresses. And so that was a 1-year purchase, so those came out, and that's why you see the overall decrease. While some lines increase overall, we see a decrease because of mattresses. Legislative continues to include funding for sustainability projects. We have $20,000 in there again this year. Planning and development, we've already talked about the funding to the new guidelines, and also a part-time permit clerk that will assist with MyGov permitting and inspection scheduling. So that is a new part-time position that Whitney will be talking about at the next meeting. The police is, if you see asset forfeiture, we're receiving a large payment this year. I think our chief has talked about it. He'll talk about it a little bit more. So that gives that asset forfeiture fund more funding there, and we kind of see that in there. And then if you see increases in overtime, that's really related to the care and maintenance of the K-9 unit. As we took that on, we knew that was coming, so that's why that's there. And Public Works it's pretty steady year after year. Ironically, the biggest jump in Public Works is usually me, because it's the street trees. And so it's all related to what ward is getting preventative pruning. If it's Ward 4, it's usually pretty slow. If it's Ward 1, there's a lot of trees, so it's usually pretty high. I think next year is Ward 3, so it's kind of right there in the middle. So I usually have the most effect on Dan's budget, which I think is kind of funny. Capital, we talked about capital a lot, so I'm just kind of brief through this. It's the same stuff that you heard at the last meeting. We talked about the sales tax, the capital. Again, it's important to point out that 57% of capital expenditures goes to debt service, 18% for computers and data, which is obviously very important. And Larry will be here next meeting to talk about IT. And then that leaves the 25% for actual capital purchasing. We do have the cash funding for next year for the fire engine and the fire and police radio, so that is in there as well.
Before you brief that, I just need something for my own edification. In my experience, I've done cash funding for big items such as fire trucks and ambulances and sanitation trucks, but we've also done sort of a lease purchase options. We've done multiple things to not necessarily have a huge outlay of cash immediately. You can lease them for 15 years, pay them off early, pay them off in 5, but not necessarily lose the cash immediately. Are those things you are willing to consider, not consider?
Show me the best deal.
Understood. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not recalling off the top of my head why we elected to.
I think it might have to do with a bit of our credit rating at the time. We wanted to make sure that we were sort of cash funding things and not having to go into additional debt. And now that's kind of
Understood.
shifted.
Yeah, I mean, your reserves are you've got really good reserves. You should be in good shape. We just submitted the documentation to S&P, so we should get another bond rating information. Once again, just wondering if you were open to the discussion. And once again, you can pay them off early with no penalties and other things like that. But lose that much cash in a year when you could potentially
like a fire truck is a purchase. Do they not offer those kinds of financing for the truck, or do they?
No, they do. They do. I've done trucks and ambulance, and in my previous career, we did it for 15 years. We paid it off in 7 with no pre-penalty, but the interest rates were well, and then we weren't out the cash, so you could still make investment options and other options like that. Just wasn't sure if the board would consider.
And I think part of it, when we made the decision a couple of years ago, is related to the fact that at the time, we weren't seeing a whole lot of return on our investments, what we're seeing now. And so the interest rate from the leases were actually a net negative to the city, whereas now, with the investments, it might be a net positive if we if we have a lease. And so those are the things that I think, we're excited to have Michelle look at next year and her new management analyst and be able to talk about those things.
And some of the things you're going to have to consider as well is most of the things are 3 years out. I mean, a fire truck right now is 36 months. So to pay that cash up front and then make the money on the money, or there's a lot of dynamics currently going into the supply chain and other situations. So I'll see what I can come up with and see what kind of proposals will be available.
The good news is both of those are next year, so we have a little bit of time to kind of research and do some more work on that. As far as we've talked about all the expenditures for fire, police, public works. I'm sure each department head will talk a little bit more about their purchases. We'll also talk a little bit about what was deferred, and this hasn't changed since last month, so that's kind of all in there. And this is the same chart we saw, so we're looking at $3.5 million of deferment over the next 3 years, which again has that cumulative effect. But I think it's, without knowing what's going on with the grocery sales tax, it's understandable, and we're ready to kind of continue kind of our mode of operation. So that brings us to Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund. So again, I'll talk more about this during my presentation, but sales tax, the 6% increase is due to the 2 TIF districts being paid off. We see a 21% increase in program fee revenue over 2022. And a lot of that has to do with increase in general programming as well as some of our other funds. Last year we said we finally hit pre-COVID numbers, and we are surpassing pre-COVID numbers now. So we're on a really good trend. We hope Brentwood Park continues that trend and we continue to do things like that. Room rental revenue, 23% increase again. We continue to see good utilization on our room rentals. That also includes a fee increase that the Public Works Department, the Public Works Committee approved during our fees and charges portion of the budget. So that's part of that as well. Expenditures, we talked about the recreation specialists, and I can talk about that more when we come up. The funding to complete water projects in the Stormwater Master Plan, the debt service, and then the big thing is our capital projects, which includes the ice rink resurfacer. Much like a lot of things, they're on a 16-month lead time. So 24 includes the down payment to get the machine started to be built, and then we paid off the bulk of it in 25. The master plan will have a little bit of money left over next year, so it will bleed over into next year. Hanley Park comfort station and parking lot replacement. Again, we're going to put that into 2 years. One reason is we just want that project to be done in the fall and winter and early spring and hopefully have it ready to go. We'll also be writing a few grants for that to try to help out with some revenue. I don't think we've included the grant revenue in there yet. I don't like to add grant revenue until I know I have it. I don't want to guess that I'm going to bring in money and then be left without it. And then we have some maintenance utility equipment for the park maintenance staff, gators, a truck, a tractor, those type of things. Big belly deck mower, because we have some really, with Mount Calvary, the need to have a larger deck to expedite the time to mow would also help with the ball fields as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at in our fund.
Are we, as far as the Parks Master Plan, we're going to be finishing a lot of that, but, are we setting aside funds, or at least we don't know what the plan's going to be, right? We don't know what projects. Are we putting funds aside for implementing whatever the plan?
Yeah, if you look at my 3 and 5 year capital plan, I basically kind of put a hold on everything outside of the Hanley Park Comfort Station parking lot until we see the results of the master plan, see what is most desired from the community, what needs we have. I think a lot of it will be related to Mount Calvary to see what we hear from there and start working off that, and then some things in Memorial Park. So hopefully. Oak Tree Park, we've done a lot of work in the last few years. Hanley Park, if we finish up the comfort station and parking lot, is in pretty good shape. Memorial Park's really that next big park, and now Mount Calvary are kind of the two parks that probably need a little
Well,
bit of attention.
and I'd also add, I hear a lot about Brentwood Park and the condition of the facilities there and whether or not there could be some significant, changes to make it a little bit more of a premium field experience for the region to use,
Yes, and we did, at least as far as
Sorry,
staff.
sports complex.
Yeah, as far
is
as
what I meant.
as this,
Sorry about
the
that.
master plan, when we talked to the consultants, we had a staff meeting. We did discuss Brentwood Sports Complex a lot and how we want to see it move forward and how we can kind of make changes, improve it. A lot of it is to continue to see some of that correlative data coming from Brentwood Bound. And I mean, we've only had one flooding issue in there this year, and it was a really small one. Two, if you count a water main break and the sewer that was down there. So, we've seen an improvement. I'll tell you, our new field guy is going to town. He's real excited. He's very knowledgeable and is doing great work already. So, I know you're down there with your daughter's soccer team. Walk around the other fields. He's been working on tilling the area to get field 1 ready, but he's also working on lips on fields 2 and 3 and things like that. So he's hit the ground running, and we're very fortunate to have him.
That's great.
Brentwood Bound, we'll see. We expect $3 million, a little bit over $3 million in continued revenue. Those are basically grant reimbursements that you have to do the project first. The TAP grant, we have 2 Muni grants. The last bit of the GRG agreement, there is a MoDOT agreement. That's basically most of the revenue, and the expenditure is just finishing up the project. That gets us the balance 98.8. We hope that Deer Creek Connector Part B will be done by the end of 24. We're all on UP's timeline as we continue to talk about, so we'll make sure that we talked about 2 phases. Phase 1 will be done early on. We hope to be able to get phase 2 done. And then really, exciting for hopefully all of us is that we really transition from construction phase to kind of the warranty and landscape phase. So when we talk about making sure that plants continue to live, any small things that might happen in the pavilion, we take care of it during the first year during the warranty phase and make sure we're on top of those things. And then the landscape maintenance that we've talked about in a couple different places. So that's kind of what we'll get to, and then real excited about taking ownership over the park and making sure we keep that a destination for a long time. And last, just the budget schedule. If we continue to go this way, which is our hope, is that we get through fire and police today, IT, planning, public works, the 18th, Parks and Recreation and Brentwood Bound won't be very long. So hopefully we can then feel comfortable with an approval on October 26th and then take it to the board for a first reading November 20th. That gives us a little bit of lead between October 26th and November 20th if we need that extra meeting in Ways and Means in November. But we're just trying to knock this out for you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to then approve the budget December 4th.
I just note of gratitude. Thanks for putting together this schedule. I find it very helpful because it allows me to bite off each subject in its due time. And I know we have at least one alderman in actual presence in the audience, and I don't know if there are others who are present online as well, but I'll make a general PSA that as questions come up, as you pore over this book between now and when we bring it to the big board, if you would please, if you've got questions that you think can be addressed in email, I think that'll help with these committee meetings, and input is appreciated, as I've done in other years too. I'm happy to recognize any alderman who wants to ask a question about a particular subject matter in a given committee meeting. But, I think doing that advance work makes this a better evaluation meeting and certainly makes it more efficient. So.
And to add on to that, Alderwoman Sims, thank you. We did receive a question already from Alderman Lockmuller, and hopefully you saw that was added to board docs. And I think what we'd like to do is just continue like a growing list at each meeting. We'll have, kind of at the bottom, questions for aldermen and answers. That way, as we get questions, we can answer them, get them into board docs for you guys so you can kind of see them and move that way.
Great. Alderwoman Tice?
I have questions before we get into the departments, so.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I would just, unless it gets away from us, just
No,
please feel
not that
free to
many.
ask your questions.
I don't think it's that many.
I'll retain my right to hall monitor.
Okay, so page 47, the general fund, minor sources of revenue. We're projecting 287 next year. What were the sources that brought us to $1 million this year, and can we replicate? Like, is that
If you give me 1 second, I'll
replicated?
find that out. I think, let me double check. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So give me 1 second, and I will find that out for you.
ask another question? Or?
Please, I can, hopefully.
Okay, so, kind of a question for Whitney, so I'll wait for her. There's also an intercity joint services revenue line. Is that money that you get, Eric, from Parks and Rec?
Is that, if it,
What page?
That is page 69, 10, 100, 4430. So it's up quite a bit this, again, it's up this year, but
that is, if I remember correctly, that is the agreement we have with the school district for crossing guards.
that would be intergovernmental. Thank you.
Yep, and
Thank
to
you.
be honest, I think they owed us a back payment that
Okay.
we collected. That's why it's higher this year and then next year.
Great. I was thinking it was maybe a parks thing. Okay.
As far as minor sources of revenue, hold up the wrong chart. Give me 1 more second.
I think Whitney is actually online, so.
Oh, I saw her earlier. Is she online? Okay. Do you want me to ask my question for Whitney? So my question for Whitney is the electrical permits and plumbing permits are projected to drop a lot, budget over budget. They're close to the estimated, but I guess I'm curious, are people just not doing electric and plumbing, and why have those lines dropped so precipitously from what we budgeted this year? And this is page 68, lines 10, 100, 4150, and 4155.
Wait for Whitney. I do have the answer to the
Okay.
minor sources of revenue.
Okay, great.
It's
And that's
a-
all my questions.
It's a couple things. So we see a big chunk this year because there was a insurance or settlement, $230,000. And I believe that was money coming in from FEMA. So we might see more, but most of the rest of the FEMA money will go into Fund 50 or capital. We saw a increase in the transfer in from the sewer fund. So that was the last payment, the $156,000. So then we lose that in future years. And then the last one was seized property. So 175,000 is what we're estimating. Chief's thought it might be over 200,000. But we don't know what the exact amount is, but we expect that to be the last bit of funding that we receive since we're no longer in the program. But it seems like from time to time, we find some extra money, which is great. But that is all restricted to the forfeit asset fund anyway. So those are the reasons why you see the increase this year and then the decrease next year.
Great, makes great sense, yes, thank you. And I see Flesh.
Work in my office listening in, so I thought I'd join. So on page 68,
It's easier to, it's the third and second to the bottom on.
yeah. So we estimated 9,563. Right now, I have that we're close to 10,000. I just wanted to be very conservative on any projections, given the increase in cost of materials that might slow building permits down, that kind of thing. So I was just being very very cautious on any future estimate.
I guess it's just, maybe we just adopted higher numbers last year and they
Yeah.
didn't come to fruition, so I didn't
With
know if
interest
there's.
rates being so high, I thought we should be more conservative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
That's all I have.
Other questions? Okay. You want to continue on?
Yeah, so whoever wants to come up next, police or fire?
Apparently a soda.
I lost out on my soda. I tried so hard. Thanks, Cottrell.
Be made of some sort. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. On the computer here, it's uploaded as a PDF, so I will scroll through this PDF as opposed to PowerPoint. So, mission of the fire department and vision statement of the fire department have not changed. This is in alignment with our strategic plan, which does run through the end of 2024. Providing excellence through service. We strive for that each and every day. Accomplishments for 2023 thus far. We still have a few more on the horizon, but the full implementation of our strategic plan with mission-specific goals and objectives. In February, the reduction of our ISO rating went into effect. So we had an improved score of a class 2. We continue to expand or enhance our technical rescue equipment. And again, these are by identified and projected needs throughout the community. As advertised, we have delivery of our off-road UTV, working with the Department of Public Safety right now to receive our ARPA reimbursement. So we will be reimbursed at $20,000 on that vehicle. Next item, continued professional development, also aligns with the ARPA fund. So we've sent a firefighter to the National Fire Academy this year. We've hosted a regional technical rescue course due to the ARPA grant. And I spoke just today with a firm out of Virginia that's going to come to town in November and teach a command level incident command for large-scale events, multiple operational periods. And that's, again, is through the ARPA grant. So I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to some line items. But that's just the continued professional development within our department. The Fire Training Commission, as we have worked on that throughout the year, that is a milestone that we have accomplished. The commission has met and entered into a lease agreement on the property, but that's where that project stands right now. So more to come. However, we do not have any money budgeted in the 2024 fiscal budget. So we just continue to work with the other municipalities and with our training chief. What does that project look like? And we have a timeline within the lease document. So we will meet on that, I suspect, probably after the first of the year and start looking at what that looks like.
I had a question on that.
Yes, sir.
I thought there was at least some ongoing cost to just having that, like we had to pay the taxes or something like that, right?
You are correct.
Don't we need to have some money budgeted for ongoing facility training?
So yes, we do have those costs captured in our training fund currently,
Okay,
but we're talking Brentwood shares around $6,000 for
okay,
that.
so nothing that.
Correct.
So you're not going to budget anything until you know there's going to be a larger facility that needs to be built?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the ground lease and the taxes, that is currently captured. So if I'm,
Okay.
yeah, if I misspoke, that is clarification.
So while we're on that, in the capital budget, it's not in the capital budget until 2027 and 2028. So is that just stuck in the capital budget because that makes the capital budget work? And this is gonna then move forward and bump other things, or?
So we know it can't wait until 2027 or the project
Could-
is dead.
Because that doesn't seem to fit just with the lease that was signed.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. So what does that look like? I know myself, Michelle and Bola have had discussions on that. We're not prepared to bring anything to Ways and Means by any stretch of the imagination yet. So creative and innovative and bring something forward when we can.
No, it's not really, yeah, it's not realistic. Anyway, well,
Other questions on that topic? Yeah, okay. We did replace aging furniture within the fire station living quarters, as Eric mentioned, and that was a one-time purchase in our operational budget, and that project is complete. And the full implementation of our drone program, there's some ongoing training, but we are up and flying. It's very successful so far. Goals and objectives for '24. The health and wellness of our firefighters remains priority. Have opportunities perhaps to explore some enhanced cancer screening and prevention that we've just, that information's just been shared amongst the fire service, kind of industry leading. So we'll be keeping our finger on that pulse. The mental health awareness and support, that has been expanded by the state of Missouri and has received some grant funding for firefighter mental health awareness. So we're just going to keep a close watch on that and see how we can draw from those benefits to help our people. The continue improving technical rescue capability. So in '24 budget, that is through training purposes. There are no capital equipment purchases for that. It's just through our training. Work on secure funding for a fire training facility, as we just stated, and what does that look like? That will be ongoing communication with this committee and with city staff. I'm excited about this. Well, Chief Bernie's very excited about the operational decision support and robust data analytics. He does a very good job supporting our department through analytics. But the ambulance fees revenues, that is the one area where we can recoup costs for our services. As I've said before, we're sending out an RFP perhaps next week or the following week. We are finalizing that right now. And we know we can capture another window that we're currently not doing, and that's where we don't transport a patient, but we treat the patient on the scene. The example is a diabetic patient becomes ill. We respond, we treat them with medicines. They are much improved and choose not to go to the hospital. Historically, we've not recovered any costs there. And so we need to work that in. And how can we improve revenue based on examples similar to that? And create a professional development career path matrix for each position. That's kind of been an ongoing process the last couple of years. We continue to expand that, and we've seen some success. As late as today, we had a firefighter receive credentialing today as a fire officer, which is a great step for people within our organization. And then the only capital item for 24 that we have proposed is to replace the aging air compressor. That's for our breathing air, the cylinders we wear on our back. So we have an in-house compressor to fill those bottles. That is an aging unit. We have spent considerable amount of money in repairs, and it's a mission-critical piece of equipment. Expenditures. So as Eric highlighted earlier, we do have a decrease in expenditures. And one area that he did not touch on that I may have to have Michelle support me on is under employee benefits, line 6065.
I can speak to that.
I have it as a question.
I can speak
Page
to that.
104.
I can speak
I
to
will let Michelle take this.
Internally, when I started to sort of touch the budget and try and wrap my arms around it, in the past, there was a labor model that was used in order to come up with salaries, benefits, and other items, and I think in the last 2 years, it wasn't used, and I re-implemented it, and then in determining that, the billing for medical insurance for the staff and for his department is billed at 100%, despite the fact that employees pay into it. So where they're capturing the employees paying into it is actually in a different department. So I will internally make those transfers and keep him whole, which is why the reduction is there. It's not a reduction overall for the city, it's actually just looking at the things and finding out where they sit and making them better. So it's not really an overall city reduction.
Certainly caught my attention. Continuing on the benefits, the critical illness pool for 24, it does increase slightly. The primary increase is we have several employees that hit the 5-year milestone as firefighters to be participant in that program. However, we're still under the $3,000 mark for 2024. I will get back to the critical illness pool to provide an update as requested last year in future slides. So I'll come back to that topic. Travels and meetings, there's a slight increase, again, just to accommodate the professional development. We push those limits, but for good reason. We're investing in our people. Fuel, again, kind of market, it's what our needs are. Training, there's a reduction. The overall training and primary reason is what I talked about earlier. We had 2 classes that we brought in and were assisted with the ARPA grants. So that was about a $30,000 reduction, almost $30,000 reduction by removing just those 2 classes out of the program. But we will continue to participate in our training consortium with Clayton, Maplewood, and Richmond Heights. Uniform purchase is troubling. That, fortunately, it's uniforms and not medical supplies, but the supply chain is crippling us. I have uniforms that were ordered in November of 22 that we still do not have. And this also expands into when we bring on a new firefighter and the turnout gear, it's a one-time purchase of that turnout gear as opposed to our department buying the PPE. That price has skyrocketed. There are some things going on in the background in that industry, and the forever chemicals that are in those turnout gear, and there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of, it's just driven the price up. And so we blew through that budget quickly, not intentionally. And then, as we've talked about a couple times, supplies, materials, there's a reduction because of the one-time purchases, and that is moved out of our operational accounts. So these next couple of slides, 3 of them actually, are different just because I transferred them straight from the Missouri Firefighter Critical Illness Pool. We just had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and so these are slides from that meeting that they provided and shared with the members. I know this committee and the full board asked for an update on that, and so I'm happy to share this information. 2022 financial results, if you just look at the bottom line, the net loss being $384,000, they anticipated that loss being greater than $500,000. And that was information that I shared with this committee for us to become members of this trust. So the first year, they felt very successful. They continued to be a healthy fund. I will show you in the next slide. 23 is performing even better. They have investment income, of course, has shown a tremendous turnaround, but the earned contributions have gone up significantly. And that is mainly due in part to the final slide I will show from their presentation. At the time of that meeting, they had 83 member agencies, over 2,600 firefighters. They are confident they will be over 100 agencies by the end of this year. There are over 300 fire agencies in the state of Missouri, so they know they're not going to capture all, but that's their hope. And as you can see, the total claims as 2022 year end is slightly over 500,000. And those have not all been paid out yet, but those are claims that have been awarded. So claims may carry out for over 4 years. That's why they're committed, just not all expensed out. Any questions on that update? Of course, they provided much better clarity. I will share that those same slides with public safety once the next meeting comes around. Capital expenditure is just a self-contained breathing apparatus compressor and fill station. We have 50,000 budgeted. We're confident we can replace that compressor for that amount.
The only question I had marked, and it's pretty insignificant, but the petro products are consistent with what we budgeted for last year, and are you thinking that we don't need to increase that due to increased cost of petrol or anything like that? But
honestly, we just looked at the trends where we were at month over month, and we just stuck with it. If we need to increase
keeping it static is pending any significant increase of gas prices and
Correct.
Okay,
because they've stayed
they keep kind of fluctuating back
exactly, but we know on diesel we're around $4 a gallon. That's kind of what we project.
Okay.
So I'm back to the capital budget, and I know the training facilities and a few years out, and I didn't compare your capital budget from last year, but like, are there things that are deferred that like well beyond 2028 that you think you're going to need before? And like, I guess this whole capital budget thing struck me because the training facility was something that was in your master plan, and then all of a sudden, but it wasn't in the capital budget. And then now the training facility's in the capital budget, so it's making me think, are there other things out there that should be captured and that we as a board should be thinking about our needs that may not be captured here?
I don't have that right in front of me right now. So yes, there are items out there. The deferred items specifically is I'm going to need a vehicle.
Like what kind, like a new
So,
truck or a car?
no,
I mean, they're just a different cost.
A staff vehicle.
Staff vehicle, okay.
That's been deferred. We're operating out of a former police vehicle because our vehicle there, the repairs were more than the vehicle was worth. So it made sense to get rid of that. So that's a need that has been deferred. We are going to have our PPE replacement coming up soon. That is, I don't know what that's going to look like because of what I stated earlier with the lasting chemicals within that gear and how that industry's having to change everything. Have a ambulance replacement that we're going to have to start taking a close look at that in 2025 because of the timeline for delivery. If they're at 36 months for delivery on an ambulance, which some agencies are, that's going to be very problematic moving forward. So we're going to have to plan and prepare for that.
So is the car that you need to replace and you're borrowing it from, or you've I guess borrowed from the police department? Is that the Tahoe that is now in
Correct. It's just been pushed out.
2028?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
So we just have needs everywhere that.
essentially, yeah, essentially.
And I'll kind of speak to that briefly. Part of the management analyst, and as we develop my department, that's going to be part of what their initial goal is to find the replacement schedules of all of the needs and wants from the department, build them in, because deferred items and it being 3.5 million, even now, this eventually is not sustainable. Like in every world I've been in, and I've done this for a long time, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the vehicles to not be replaced, for your air conditioners to not be replaced. But I don't have a story to tell until I can get my own arms wrapped around it. So the management analyst is the capital and the capital programs in and of themselves, the conditions of them, their useful life. They give useful life for reasons, and PPE and first responders and the police department and their vehicles. So in order to sort of see what the story is and then how to tell it and then potentially give recommendations on how to fund it, that is the first.
That's great to hear, because it's almost like, I think it hit me I've done this in my 5th year now, so it hit me when we did the training facility. I'm like, okay, so the capital budget is sort of there, but it's not really a document that is, I mean, it's useful, but we don't really rely on it because some crisis comes up and we bump things up because things that should have been in
And
the
even
capital
my
budget
short time
are
here,
like
you can cut these
deferred out.
items, but even much like the air units that I think have been cut 3 times since I said that they say, and then I've been here, and 2 of them had to be replaced because they
just failed,
They have failed. So, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that you can say no during the budget sessions, but if it fails during the year, you're going to end up funding it anyway.
Right.
You're going to have to find the funding. The library unit went out, you had to fund it. Part of the other thing is you are doing payments towards the cops. So it's part of my chore is to decide how do we keep you financially stable and how do we fund some of these items that the critical deferredness isn't honestly doing anybody any good. So that's key, and luckily McIntyre is analytical and on board, and I think we're going to run fast. But that I won't have answers soon, but that is when I look at what the department needs and what the city needs, it's important. It's important. So it's coming. It hit me too, sitting in these meetings and sitting in what's happening. How do we fund these things, and how do we get the street sweeper, and how do you get these things are important. So.
To add on to that, I mean, I think this is kind of the conversation we started in 2017. We knew that this was going to happen. We knew that there wasn't going to be as much capital funding, and we knew we were going to have to defer things. I think department heads are doing the best they can to make sure that they continue to run services and are being fairly understanding of where we're at. As we talked about a month ago, I think the other question out there is the grocery sales tax. I mean, that is why we made the decision not to cash fund anything or pull anything out of the deferment, because we want to see what happens with that, with understanding that maybe in June we can come back and have another discussion. If that fails and we feel comfortable, then maybe we can look at fund balance a little bit as well and tackle some of these things at that time as well.
Great, thank you. That was not necessarily directed at the fire department. That struck me, and it's a problem throughout all the departments.
There is a global conversation that needs to be had.
Yes.
It is
Great.
global.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the fire department? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Save the best for last.
Good evening. For the police department in the 2024 budget presentation, we promise to be shorter than the fire department. I hope.
We might have questions.
Famous last words.
Told you we should have went first. Nobody would listen. On the PowerPoint that you had attached to board docs, you see that the mission statement for the police department reflects the same one as last year. Going to the second slide. Bear with me on goals and objectives coming up. You have implementation of the updated policies. The police department has over 100 general orders. We have spent several months renovating those general orders, refreshing them. It's a work in progress. It's taken considerable amount of time, and it's going to go into 2024. When we finish those general order renovations, they will be posted and given to our officers in 2024. So that's listed as one of the goals and objectives. Our bike unit that's patrolling our park area, our plan is to update the bikes and replace them with new bikes, 5 of them. Also included in that is weapon optics. So the police patrol rifles that are in all of our cars, there's a shelf life on the optics, on the aiming device on the rifle, and they need to be replaced. So that's included in the goals and objectives for next year, is replacing those optic systems. Additional training, like Ronnie said from the fire department, we emphasize as well the training piece in our police department. But included in that, just I think that the board will probably hear on the 16th of October about a tactical pursuit policy that we're looking at. So that will be part of the training process as a goal and objective for next year. During 2023, we had our officers attack almost 500 businesses in Brentwood, meaning that they physically went into each business, made contact. There aren't many police departments that are doing that kind of work. So it was a very successful program, but we're going to continue that now as we go into 2024. Included in that are school visits as well. That ended up being very successful. The schools really enjoy the officers walking through on day watch on a regular basis. Included in that is TJ and Red walking through with the kids. So that's worked out real well for us. We'll continue to do that. The bike patrol that you see listed as a goal and objective, we just had an officer return from bike patrol certification. So Hobby will be able to teach other officers and certify other officers to be bike patrol officers. So that'll make the opportunity for us to get into the neighborhoods on those bikes more robust as we go into 2024. Succession planning, I think this year is a great example of why it's so important in any organization, really, for us in the police department. We lost 3 senior sergeants to retirement and Major McIntyre, who you saw last Monday. So as we onboard new people, Angie's a great example. She stands next to me as the administrative person now. It's very important that for the last months, she was kind of an understudy to Jim McIntyre and what Jim was doing. So she steps into that role seamlessly, we hope, as she takes over all of the administrative duties for our department. But that's another example is our training coordinator, who is on this list as well. So as we have Josh Bowersox take over the training piece of our department, that's all part of the succession plan as we go forward. One of the things that we'd like to do, especially as the city onboards a new public information person, is to look at our social media and make that a better program than we have it currently. I think we can do a better job. Angie in particular has some expertise in this. She took several classes in the FBI Academy, so we're really looking in 2024 to try and make that a better program through the police department as we try and pump out information on good things our officers doing, crime reports and things like that. There's a couple small things on that were listed for building upgrades, showers. Our kitchen in the police department needs an overhaul, and it's on the list for 2024. Going forward on the next screen, as you see 2023's accomplishments, go through those quickly. I talked about the review of the policies that's ongoing. We established our K-9 unit that you all are familiar with, deployed additional license plate readers and flock cameras in our city, and that's an ongoing process as we go into '24. We are looking at, I think we're going to be forced to look at a contract with Flock over a 5-year period. We may not have a choice. So as we go into 2024, we're looking at that. In 2023, we established the park unit, as you know, and onboarded 3 officers to patrol our parks. It's been very successful thus far. People, a lot of good feedback from our citizens about the presence of those officers. It's pretty funny to see the mileage that the bike officers in those parks and the weight they've lost as part of that program. It's been, they're in great shape. It's pretty cool. We've promoted corporal sergeants and lieutenants in 2023. 2024, we anticipate making additional promotions to the rank of lieutenant, which of course then there'll be some follow-on promotions in '24 as we go from there. In 2023, we had to find a new school resource officer. Amon Figs was promoted and had to leave the school, so Hobby took over in that role. He's a very energetic, very charismatic guy, and he's done very well so far, and I think he'll be a good addition to that program. So far, it's gone well. During 2023, we achieved the second 4-year installation of our CALIA certification for the department. In July, we had to go to Oklahoma City and go before the CALIA board, and that was a success here in 2023. We updated our personnel tracking software in 2023. We are growing as we look at scheduling and other items that are, frankly, they're just kind of a headache for us, that we're looking for some better options in software, and I think we're on a good track to find that. Angie did a nice job with that and through ADP and some other programs that we already have in-house, rather than actually having to go out and buy and upgrade. So we're hoping that as we go into 2024, those are going to help us. We delivered supervisory and leadership training. So as we talked about, as part of really that that sustainability of the ranks of the department and training the officers that are getting promoted, there have been several in 2023. We have delivered several training exercises for leadership and newly promoted people. So, and we will continue to do that in '24. Next slide, line item increases. There's a couple things that weren't on this list that I believe Eric mentioned in his presentation. One of them was the overtime increase of about $9,000 requested going into next year. As part of the K-9 program, all K-9 officers by state law are required to be paid additional money per day for care of their animal. So that really was the increase on that overtime request. The crossing guards is on this list, as you see, and they were being paid. Our crossing guards, and it's a little complicated or strange how it's set up, but the PD budget pays for 2 crossing guards. Actually, it's 1 1/4 of a crossing guard. The school pays a piece of 1 of them. So, yeah, it's confusing. But they were not being paid much, and so they were caught up to, I think it's going to be $15 an hour. Does that sound right to you guys? Yeah. So $15 an hour it's a significant increase from what they were making. So that's included in the budget for an increase. Uniform purchases, to echo a little bit of Chief Cottrell's comments about uniform costs, they are going up significantly as we onboard new officers and people leave and we have to hire new people. It becomes quite an expense, and sometimes year to year it's difficult to judge how many people we're going to have to do that for. This year, as an example, we've had several retirements, so we had to hire folks, and then the board authorized us 3 additional positions. These things add up quickly when you start putting people in uniforms, so there's an increased request in the budget for that. Purchase of the new weapon optics and lights and the new bicycles is also included in this, and I spoke to that as our goals and objectives piece. There's additional costs, and Michelle could probably speak more succinctly to this than I can, but you see some additional costs. Some of that is driven by the fact that we have 3 additional officers, so some of the costs that you see that are increased in our personnel of the budget are included in that. There is an increase in fuel. As gasoline now is creeping back up, it's difficult from year to year to try and judge what to budget for. But we continue to have about 25,000 miles put on each patrol car in our city every year. Our officers do a great job patrolling the city, but it's a cost to doing that business. Part of it's gasoline, part of it is the maintenance and repair of these vehicles and replacement of the police vehicles. So the miscellaneous contractual went up a little bit, and really what drives that is you look at the budget and you look at what is included in the police department's miscellaneous contractual. ECDC is really the moving target there. We really don't know how much on a year-to-year basis what they're going to charge us. Part of that is affected by the potential of possibility. We've already had one city that's backed out of ECDC, so that's affected cost. There could be others. We're not exactly sure what 2024 is going to bring. Slide. Almost done here, but the asset forfeiture fund for the police department, just, I think that most of you are aware of this, but the asset forfeiture fund can only be spent by the police department, and it has some very strict guidelines on what we can spend it on in terms of the money that's in there. This money came from a task force officer, and I believe he's sitting in the back of the room. One of them was. Jason Simpson was assigned to DEA for years, and then after him, another officer went in there. That money takes a long time to funnel back to the police departments after an asset forfeiture event. So it kind of trickles in, so to speak. We, when I got here in 2018, we did not have anyone assigned to DEA. So the asset forfeiture piece stopped. But that money trickles in now, even from those years back when guys were working at that job. So Michelle made reference to, I thought it was Eric, that we were looking for what we think is one more shot of money into that fund. We think it's going to come in before the end of the year, and it should be, for us, we would consider it significant. We're not exactly sure what it's going to be, but DEA says it's coming. So we get trickles occasionally, but that last shot's probably going to be really it. So as we looked at the budget process since I've been here, we really, we've gotten to the point, we've honed it down to the point where we think that money can only be spent by the department anyway. So really what we did was we separated out the new UTV that was purchased through asset forfeiture, and what was left, we just bucketed it in these different accounts in the event that we need money in the year on something that we don't see coming. Odds are we're not going to spend that money, but there may be a capital item, or there may be training and travel events that we ask to spend inside the asset forfeiture piece. Those are approved ways that we can spend that money. So that's why you see the asset forfeiture accounts funded like they are. That's all I had. If anyone has any questions.
I did that. You answered some of my questions, but I did have one question, and I think I know the answer based on what you said, but I just want to make sure I have it correct here. The police seizure budget, can you define that, why capital expense has gone up to so significantly, 35,000, and then that jump, is that because of the additional officers? Is that?
Well, no, that's if you're talking about asset forfeiture.
Yeah.
That's the categories that I just spoke to, that we bucketed the money in all of those different areas. Doesn't mean we're going to spend it, but in talking to Bola and Michelle during our meeting and Eric, we thought it was best just to put what's in that account and spread it out in those buckets in the event that we need it in the year.
Okay, well, I'm actually talking about line item 10, 221, 6485, capital expense.
Okay.
The proposed, well, the adopted budget for 23 was only, $4,000, but then we're estimated now for 23 to actually be 35,000, and then we'll estimate 35,000 again next year.
And I think I can help with this a little bit too. The idea is when we were looking at the budget last year, if you look at that it was basically $24,000. That's what we believed was still remaining in asset forfeiture funding.
Okay,
Now is we said that $175,000 coming in, and I think there was some additional funding that wasn't spent last year. So I think I forget what the total amount is this year. But the idea is to have that hopefully in 3 years, so we can kind of see what's left in the fund, and then if something does come up, it's the funding's already there, so that it's not a surprise to the board that something might be coming. So that funding, that 85,000 for next year, can only be spent through the asset forfeiture fund, as Chief described. So it's just making sure it's there in case something comes up.
You're going to have a timing difference between when the revenue came in and when the expenses will hit to spend those monies down. So
Okay.
the revenue came in, so he had a spike in revenue of 83,000, 108,000, but he didn't spend it all in 1 year, and it can only be, those funds the city can't use them, so they're earmarked in those other buckets for those other years.
okay, understood.
And the 2023 projection, I think, was impacted by the purchase of our UTV.
It was, correct.
And then the 2024, I believe capital is more than the other 4 accounts under the asset forfeiture. And that was kind of at the suggestion of city staff, who said, you know, when you do have an unexpected expense, it very likely will be a capital expense.
Correct.
So we kind of just wanted to get out in front of that. I know I'm probably beating a dead horse at that point, but that's why that's higher.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
What is red dot site training?
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Sonny.
What is red dot, am I on? What is red dot site training? I just didn't,
So
it's,
we are transitioning handguns. This is aside from the rifles. We're transitioning handguns into a different model of weapon. In layman's terms, it's in traditional weapon sightings, you look in the sights, back sights, and index the front sight. This is a completely different weapon system where you're going off of a dot that's indexed on a target, and you what's that?
like in the movies.
It's just like in a movie.
Like-
It's kind of the state-of-the-art new thing that's coming along.
Yeah, that's all. Okay, all right. It's a literal description, I just wasn't sure.
It doesn't project the laser. It doesn't project the laser.
I liked it better.
Oh, okay.
It
But,
allows for, in theory, it allows for officers to certified to teach the other officers who choose to go that route.
Accuracy becomes much improved under that system if you know how to use it and you practice with it.
Alderwoman Tice?
So I have a question about Prop P money, which I may be needing to direct it over to this side, but in 2025 and in 2026, the Prop P money goes negative. So is that then coming
just
from?
call out
Oh,
where
sorry,
you
I'm
are?
on page 93, the Prop P section.
Yeah, so what happens with Prop P is the funding goes in the general fund, and as we say, I'm pulling it up right now, is that most of it's used for staffing. It's used for the fire marshal, the major, the law enforcement analyst, and 2 police officers. And what we're basically showing is that the fact that there's no funding left available in Prop P. So we're using it primarily for staffing, and we've passed the kind of that threshold of where staffing is and things like that. So ultimately, it just what the extra access funding is coming out of general fund.
Okay, well, I assumed that, but that must be why you're showing it, just
Yep.
for the visual of the money's going away. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our,
I did have
Oh.
one follow-up question, not for them.
okay, go ahead.
But one follow-up question on probably administration. Knowing that, well, I guess it relates a little bit to Chief's goals as well, but knowing that we're talking about sort of a branding initiative for the city, potentially in the Communications Committee, and I know the plan is get the new communications manager on board and then sort of finalize some of that. Are there any funds in here for that purposes? Where would that be?
I believe it's in miscellaneous contractual in, I think it's 101.
I think it's 101 as well.
Yeah, so miscellaneous contractual in, 10, 101, 6210. 84.
60 what?
6210.
What page are you
6210,
on?
okay.
84.
Page 84.
I'm sorry, page 84.
Let's have a standing rule. When we
Sorry.
refer to the book, we say the page number and the line item. Like,
I was already on the
right.
page, though.
yes, in your mind's eye, but not to anyone who would know. What was that again? Eric, could you just repeat that?
Yeah, so we believe the funding is in 10, 101, 6210.
So that's the 45,000 correct?
That's part of it. yeah.
Currently? And, okay.
Are we taking up admin tonight? Are we, like,
We
I
are
have-
not.
Oh, I
Okay, 'cause
thought we
So
were.
this- Are we?
Yeah.
Are-
Okay, never mind,
I
we'll
thought
take
we
it
were
up.
just
No,
doing-
they're-
I'll ask that
Is it on the?
question.
It is not on the schedule. Administration's not on
Right.
the schedule.
I thought it
and
was,
so
I thought
would-
it was going on tonight, but,
It-
And I think maybe there's confusion because I was just doing the general
Yeah, that was
overview of
just
the
a
whole
general,
budget.
and then we were doing police and fire, so.
Is
Could
that-
we
is that
add that
missing?
to, it is missing.
Sure, we can add admin. I mean, we could
got
go
several
over,
questions.
we don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but ultimately admin's pretty consistent year after year. You see increases in personnel.
I would just, I mean, I'm happy to, I don't mean to cut off debate, but one of the things I like to do is to give people notice to prepare for a particular topic.
We can-
So if we just on the fly
Yeah.
take up a subject, someone may miss that and it's not to be revisited. I certainly I'm not gonna ask away, but I think it would be also something that would need to be added. And if you think that you get ahead of the schedule and you want to just tentatively, add a topic, do that, and then we can push it to the next. But
I think we
I don't
can-
want to get pulled into the
Sure.
weeds of other subjects when they're not on the agenda.
I mean, I think if we look at our schedule, the 26th is probably
Thursday,
the best place to kind of
26th,
add it because that would kind of even out the 18th and the 26th. So
Do that.
I will add it onto the 26th and we'll be able to answer, give a presentation and answer those questions for you guys.
Great, I too thought it was tonight, and I have questions, so we'll look
Sorry.
forward to the 26th.
That is my fault, probably.
Maybe they'll be answered by then.
Yeah.
Where did you see that? Because I didn't have that on my.
No, I thought you announced it last night, and I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
think it was just general. I was
It
going.
says-
I was
it says
general budget.
General
session.
administration.
Administration, so I
Yeah.
assumed that meant
Yes,
Sure.
as did I.
admin section, but
Yep.
that's fine, we can,
I'll have it ready for you guys
Okay.
on the 26th or 8th, whatever date it is. 26th.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, well, we'll move on to 7B, which is Missouri Ground Emergency Medical Transport.
Yes, thank you. This is a time-sensitive matter. Typically bring this forward to public safety much earlier in the year, but just a brief background on that. So with our EMS billing contract expiring at the end of this year, we've had a lot of back and forth with our vendor. How do we proceed? Because this program, although it covers services that we've already provided, PCG's services will continue beyond the end of this year. So we've had quite the back and forth. I finally received a clean contract from EMS MC to add PCG. This is similar since the same practice since 2019 for the reimbursement of services for Medicaid patients. This is a federal program that Missouri participates in. We have participated in very successfully since 2019. So I'm asking for approval for this and to move to the October 16th Board of Aldermen meeting. Our documents are due November 30th.
I'll make a motion that we move forward to the full Board of Aldermen, the department's participation in the Missouri Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program.
second?
Okay, got a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould. Is there any discussion on that? Questions? All right, seeing none, roll call.
Chairman Sims,
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Alderwoman Harder. Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, item 8 on the agenda is citizen comments. Do we have anyone who is either present in the gallery or online that would like to make a comment? Come on down. Okay. Oh, yeah,
Whitney, that's
thank
her
you. I
hand.
was thinking the same thing. Okay, seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry, I thought that when they said.
Well, well, it wasn't, like, that's just not a topic that, like, it wasn't a topic and I have questions. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One thing I really, like the one thing that, a lot, and like,